Well, good day to you. It is July the 24th, and I hope wherever you are having a wonderful day. My name is Gary Willing, and as always, I want to welcome everyone to Search for Signs, and of course, welcome everybody back who has heard these videos before. But anyway, if you have heard these videos before, I want to remind you of this. I know you're probably getting sick and tired of it, but if you're totally new, you've never heard me say this, so it's important for you to hear this too. If you want to know more about who and what Maitreya is, or if you want to see if there's any truth to this information, the best thing to do is simply read more about them. I've included links to websites in the description portion of every one of these videos that take you to websites that talk about this information in some way. If you want to know more and you don't know anything about who and what Maitreya is, or you want to see if there's any truth to it and you don't know anything about this, the best thing to do is to look at the Share National site. Link is in the description. But the other websites are really informative as well, and they're all there for you and they're all free. So hopefully you'll do it at some point. If you want to come back and join the discussion, of course you can post comments. You can post your questions in the comments section. If the spirit moves you and want to email me, you can email me at searchforsigns@mail.com. Now, YouTube is labeling it a little differently for me, so everybody's name is their @ name now instead of just what their title channel or the channel name is. But anyway, @ Toby Clear 1651, thank you. @ Lion of Judah 3, @ John Haggerty 4396, Eduardo 1808. This one sounds like a name for Elon Musk's new kid. NA-NC6QT. And @ Zen, I'll just say, I don't know her name is Zen. But anyway, thank you very much, guys, for and girls, for commenting and asking questions. Now, Zen, I'm going to start with you. Are you familiar with Edie Billy Moria? Maria? Anyway, I always butcher everybody's names. I'm so sorry. That's like not my strength. See, he said, are you familiar with Edie Billy Moria? Seems like a very wise soul. And it always takes one to know one there, Zen. But no, I'm not familiar with this person. I will do my research and look into it. You always drop people names and everything like this for me to study and look at. I really do appreciate when you do that. And then you also went on to say, my religion is very simple. My religion is kindness. And gosh, I wish everybody's religion was like that. You would think, I mean, to be honest with you, if you created a religion with the people of today and you had billions of followers that was like your whole religion was being kind, they would still find some way to be violent about it. Because just look at Christianity. I mean, Jesus was the first person in human history to be love in its perfection. Not the last, but the first. And we created this whole ideology around what we think Jesus is and who he is and all that kind of stuff. And just what I know about the Christians in the United States, they sure got it wrong because they all own guns and they're all about the Second Amendment, and Jesus is about the Second Amendment and the right to own guns and all that kind of, I don't know, it's just crazy. It's a crazy good nuts world. But anyway, they'll eventually get it too. As the Master Jesus once said to a colleague of mine, his most ardent followers will be the last to join hands. So anyway, take it for what it is. Now, Lion of Judah 3, you said 495 likes, speaks volumes. I guess you're talking about one of my videos. But anyway, I don't really understand how is that speaking volumes, to be honest? That 495 people like it, I'm only reading this comment because I'm going to segue into the comment that John Haggerty was saying about Benjamin Creme. Putting these videos up is really not about likes. It's not about views for me, and it's not about people believing it or not or whatever. It really is just to let whoever wants to know, who's interested in this information, know about it. Then hopefully you'll take it a step further and read more about this information for yourself, and then you can see if there's any truth to this information or not, and then you can see what you want to do with it. That's it. And I get my cues from Benjamin Creme because he used to say his job was the simplest job in the world. All you had to do was tell everybody about Maitreya. He didn't have to he didn't try to get you to believe it because it wasn't necessary for him to believe it. All he had to do was just tell you about it. So when it gets to comments like John Haggerty, and I really do appreciate you commenting, John, because I always encourage comments. So I'm not being critical of what you're saying. I just wanted to talk about it. You said Mr. Creme was a gentleman, and no one doubted his sincerity, but he said Maitreya was appearing to Christians, even evangelicals. no one has ever come forward and said they met and spoke with Maitreya. Benjamin Creme must have died a puzzled and disappointed man. Now, the two things that you said in this comment that I don't believe to be true. First, there were people who doubted his sincerity all the time. And there was also people who doubted his sincerity that comment on this channel from time to time. So that's not entirely true, but I get where you're coming from. And he was a gentleman, and it was a very kind man. And, he had a tough nut, but he was a very kind man. He had really a will to purpose about him that I've never seen in anybody in my own life. And I have to say that about him. He had an inexhaustible will about him. Even with all the physical problems that he had toward the end of his life, he never stopped. But it is not true to say, too, that no one has ever come forward and said they met or spoke with Maitreya, whether they're individuals or groups. So what do I mean by that? Well, I think what you're talking about is you're talking about the Christian groups that Benjamin Creme claimed from the 1980s to the early 2000s saw Maitreya in some way, shape, or form, whether they're Muslim, Buddhist, Protestant, Catholic, that kind of stuff. And he said that groups were seeing Maitreya all over the world as their awaited teacher. So if there were Christians, they wouldn't see him as the Imamati. He would appear to them as Jesus. If he was Muslim, he wouldn't appear as Jesus. He would appear as the Imamati, or where they would think the Imamati would look. Now, the reason why I know it's not true that no one came forward is because the very first group that saw Maitreya, the Maitreya Katsa group in Nairobi, Kenya, she came out and said that she saw Maitreya. She was interviewed by the press. It was went all over the news wires and so forth. And Ben said it would happen, it was going on for several days. I didn't see anything about it, or I would have been rather intrigued about it at the time. I was a teenager. I would have definitely been really into it. But anyway, I didn't pick up on anything, but whatever. But it was all over the AP wires, according to Ben. And she eventually spoke on, I think it was 60 Minutes, the CBS news program that they always put out on Sundays. And you can watch the interview on YouTube. The very 2020 or 60 Minutes or whatever it was. It was either 60 Minutes or 20. I can't really remember. But anyway, if you go to YouTube and you search Maitreya Katsa Maitreya Nairobi, her video comes up where she talks about meeting Maitreya. Now, here's the thing about Maitreya Katsa. She was a fundamentalist Christian nun. She did not believe a single thing about Maitreya and who Benjamin Creme said Maitreya was and who I believe Maitreya to be. Did not believe a single thing about it. She and her group of followers saw him as Jesus because that's how they expected him to look. There's even a photograph of how he looked to them, which is that picture of Maitreya with that white headdress. Now, it's also not entirely true to say that all the other religious groups that saw Maitreya never came forward and spoke to anybody about it. Now, the one instance that I know of didn't get much press, and there's a reason why, is Ben made the announcement in Share International magazine one month that Maitreya appeared to some fundamentalist Protestants, or evangelicals maybe, in Dallas, Texas. And unbeknownst to Ben, because he eventually kind of quashed this whole activity, the Dallas group, the Transmission Meditation group in Dallas that was doing all the outreach at the time, put an article or an ad in a paper, inviting anybody who had been possibly at this, religious event that saw Jesus, appear to them out of the blue, blah, 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 blah. You're invited to talk to us about it. And a woman did talk to him, and Betsy said, based on what she was saying, and the way she was about it, that she felt she was being sincere, that she was there and she saw the whole thing. The guy, Maitreya appeared like Jesus to her congregation, and a lot of them wanted to go and talk to everybody about it, and their pastor told them no. And to a lot of these very fundamentalist religious people, if their religious leader tells them no, they don't do it. So that's why they never went to the press about it. The other, it's not really Maitreya appearing to this church, but with the the Copper Ridge Baptist Church in Knoxville, Tennessee. This is another example of this kind of thing, because I had seen these crosses of light in the windows in this little church in Knoxville, Tennessee called Copper Ridge Baptist Church. And Joe Bullard wanted to invite everybody to come see it. He thought it was a miracle for everybody, not just their church and not just for the Christians. Everybody. Doesn't matter whether you're atheist or whatever. He was so excited about this to show this to people. And the church leaders, or the board, or I guess of this church, didn't agree with him. There was a very contentious kind of meeting, and they destroyed the panes of glass. Because it's like, if we can't have it just for ourselves, we're just going to destroy it. That's how a lot of these people think. And so it's not a stretch or out of the realm of possibility that Maitreya could appear to them out of the blue and nobody talk about it. Now, Ben did say once Maitreya is out known for who he is and people still feel more comfortable with it, more and more people will talk about their experiences that they had back, 25, 30 years ago. But right now you guys have to kind of take it on faith that that's true. Now, the other thing too is individuals such as myself, and I'm not the only one claiming this, there are thousands upon thousands of people who have had experiences with Maitreya in their own life and have come forward and talked about it. Whether it's just sending in a letter to Share International about their experience, or they're like me and they're dumb enough to talk about it on YouTube. But I've had a lot of experiences that I've had with Maitreya. Most of them are actually recorded in some way in my videos, and I have a whole playlist where I talk about my own personal experiences. Now, I've had some really wild experiences, especially ones that happened before I knew anything about this information, John. But the one that is really just, it for me, when I thought about it, it really solidified for myself, gave me this, rather than me believing it perhaps, or believing it to be true up to a point, it kind of took me to the point where I was like, there's no other way that this could have happened. And this is, I think, where Ben was. See, Ben didn't believe this information to be true. He knew it to be true. And before I tell you about my own experience, one thing he said that helped him to realize the truth of this information, when he was studying with his master, he was studying telepathically. He was in London, his master was in the Himalayas. And he asked his master telepathically for proof and evidence that he was real. He wasn't a figment of his own imagination. And his master sent him a picture of himself in the mail. Mailed it. He got it in his post office box, or his mailbox or whatever in front of his home. And it was a picture of his master. That's when he knew it was real, right? I think Alice Bailey asked for the same thing. She asked for proof and evidence of this being real, so she didn't know if she was going crazy too. Now, for me, what led me to really believe it was, when I saw this for myself, I was like, oh my gosh, there's no way this isn't true. Is even though I met him and I've had some wild, crazy experiences, and he's taught me a lot of wonderful things, and I've used it and I've applied it to what he said, and I talk about it in these videos, the thing that really led me to believe that this is true 100% was the experience when I asked Maitreya for help in cleaning a building that I was cleaning, because I was really stressed. I was working 2 other jobs. I was exhausted. I was tired. And I just asked for help with the trash in this one side of the building that I was cleaning. And for a week he did. And it was just enough to kind of get me over the hump. Now here's where it was, and I didn't put the 2 and 2 together, that it was Maitreya who actually cleaned out the trash. I thought this group that was up in this side of the building had been out and about and wasn't in the office for that whole week. That was my thinking. It wasn't until a woman came to me, and the way it went down was kind of funny. She wanted to use the restroom. I said, sure, no problem. And she said, hey, don't close the door. I don't have my keys. And I said, okay, no problem. And she goes, and by the way, don't tell your associate to lock the door either. I'm like, what associate are you talking about? And she says, the African-American fellow that helps you out from time to time. And I didn't have any assistant that helped me. I was by myself. And it was Maitreya that got the trash, because it was a semi-secure building. You had to have a pass to get in there and all that kind of stuff, a card to get in there. And he couldn't just slip past the security desk without them knowing about it. But for a week, he cleared out all my trash. And this woman, when I told her I didn't have a person that helped me, she was like very concerned and worried, like, oh my gosh, who was in this building getting the trash? He didn't know who it was. I started laughing and said, it's okay. It's okay. Now, the funny thing, too, about this story that I think is just a wonderful way for it to kind of cap the story was I couldn't remember this woman's name. For years, I couldn't remember her name. And when I wanted to start doing these videos, I wanted to tell this story. And I wanted to use this woman's name because I thought it would give a little bit more credence to what I was talking about. And so if you don't know the hand of Maitreya, if you look at a photograph of this hand of Maitreya that was taken from a mirror in Barcelona, Spain, John, according to Maitreya himself, he said, if you simply look at a photograph of this hand, and there's a link in the description to go to the Sharon National site, and there's an image of it, and you can do the same thing for yourself. Anybody can do this. If you look at just the hand of Maitreya and ask him for help, he will help you as much as he can. And he even says his help is there for the asking. All you have to do is ask. So I did. I asked him for this. This is what I think is quite extraordinary about the ending of the story. Is here I am. I'm trying to, I had this wonderful experience years and years ago. Couldn't remember this woman's name. Wanted to tell everybody about it on this YouTube channel. I look at the hand of Maitreya, this photograph, and I said, Maitreya, is there any way you can help me to remember this woman's name? And the very next day, this woman shows up to my job. The very next day, in a totally different part of town where I had originally seen her. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it, you're here. And she was so dumbfounded as to why I would be so excited to see her, because I hadn't seen her in, I think, 6 or 7 years at that point. And I said, what is your name? And she goes, Carol. And then the next day I recorded the video, and of course now I remember her name. But anyway, so that story, all the other stories, my payphone story and some of the other things that I've had with Maitreya are quite extraordinary experiences. That one in and of itself led me to believe that there's so much truth to this information. Even though there's no evidence of him being on TV, there's no evidence of people seeing him in these churches and so forth, I know for a fact that it's true because of that story. Because I didn't even see him. I asked for his help. Somebody else who doesn't know anything about this information saw him. It's quite an extraordinary experience. But I know also, too, that Ben didn't die a puzzled and disappointed man, because the time that I saw him, the last time I saw him in 2010, he was so full of joy and love, even though he couldn't even see anything. And I always say this and I always tear up, because he was not, for me, to me, and towards me, not the most loving and affectionate man. He was very cold and oftentimes brutally honest with me. But the last time I saw him in face to face, even though he couldn't see me, right when I thought to myself, I said, he was hugging all these people on the way out. And I know he knew that this was the last time he would ever see us. As I was walking, I was trying to skirt around some people. I had this thought to myself. I said, he's never going to want to hug me. That's what I said to myself. Right when I had that thought, he goes, where is Gary Willing? Where is he? And I kind of look, and he grabbed my hand and pulled me toward him and gave me this huge hug and told me he loved me. And so the last thing that he said, from what I hear from people who were there when he died, he was telling them to tell the Sharon National group to love one another. So he didn't die a disappointed and puzzled man. He gave his entire life to service. Once he dedicated himself to this information after Maitreya had asked him, he dedicated his whole life to service. And I've never met another individual like that. I know people who contribute and do a lot of really good things in the world and those kind of things. I've met a lot of people like that, but never somebody that just totally gives their whole life to service. And that was Ben. He had a will about him that was inexhaustible. At the face of physical frailties and pain and being blind and all this stuff, did not stop until the day he died. He knew how important this information was. But for him, he said it very simply. He said his job is the most simple job in the world, simplest job in the world. All he had to do was tell everybody about it. Had he been trying to convince people, he would have been left being puzzled and disappointed. But he was totally detached about how people reacted to this information. He was totally patient with and loved humanity in spite of this. But the thing that also, too, that I noticed about Ben after he died is he readied humanity enough in the times that he did it to allow Maitreya to realize that humanity really is ready for his information. And he came on TV and has been talking to humanity now more and more openly, whether all evidence to the contrary. But he could not have done that had it not been of the inexhaustible work and service of Benjamin Creme. Would never been able to do it. So I don't think he died a puzzled and disappointed man at all. So I know for myself, I'm not as detached as Ben is, and because of knowing because of some of the experiences that I've had, like I said, all evidence to the contrary, I don't even care either. I just keep talking about it and talking about it. I know eventually, some point, we'll eventually all know who Maitreya is. But anyway, I cannot thank you enough for your comments. John, thank you very much, because it gave me something to talk about. I love you guys. You guys have a wonderful day. Stay safe out there, and I look forward to putting out videos in the very, very near future. Have a great day. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.